I stood in the bright, air-conditioned hallway of that high-end Scottsdale condo building, my hand raised to knock on my daughter Kayla's door. I was just about to rap my knuckles on the wood. "Wait." The voice was urgent, cutting through the heavy silence. I turned. A man I recognized as Dennis, the property manager, was hurrying down the hall toward me. "Wait," he said again, slightly out of breath. He stopped a few feet away. You're her father, right, Samuel?" He didn't wait for me to nod. "Listen, I need to tell you something before you go in there. It's about last week." He looked at the door, then back at me, his expression grim. "There was an incident. 5 minutes after it happened, the police arrived." To understand what Dennis's words meant, you have to go back 72 hours. My wife Laura had been in Scottsdale for 2 weeks visiting our daughter Kayla and her husband Tyler. It was supposed to be a nice long visit, just mother-daughter time, and for the first 10 days, it was. We'd talk every night, just a quick call before bed. Laura would sound happy, relaxed. Then 3 days ago, the call stopped. The first day I didn't worry. She was busy. Maybe they went out for dinner or to a show. The phone sat on the kitchen counter, dark. The second day, I started checking my messages. I called. It rang, then dropped to voicemail. "Hey, this is Kayla. We can't get to the phone, leave a message." That cheerful, upbeat recording. I left a message. "Laura, hi, it's me. Just checking in. Call me when you get this." The third day, the knot in my stomach felt like a cold stone. This was not like Laura. She's not a forget to charge her phone person. She's a call you back in 5 minutes person. The silence felt wrong. It felt heavy. I sat at my desk trying to work, but my mind kept drifting. I'm a retired forensic accountant. My job for 30 years was to find the story hidden in the numbers, to find the one detail that didn't fit the one transaction that exposed the lie. And this silence, it didn't fit. I started to replay the last 6 months in my head, looking for the pattern. It all started with their tech startup, some crypto venture. Kayla and Tyler were so convinced. They were brilliant, they said. This was it. They were going to change everything. We'd helped, of course. We'd given them money to help secure their first round of funding. We were proud. But the calls changed. They stopped being about the exciting next phase and started being about the funding gap. "Dad, the investor, just needs a little more reassurance," Kayla had said a few months back. Her voice was tight, stressed. "We're so close, but we just need a bridge loan, just to get us to the next milestone." We'd said no, gently but firmly. We'd given enough. We were retired. The calls became less frequent after that. And then came the call I'd tried to forget. It was about 2 months ago. Kayla calling me alone. "Dad," she'd started, her voice sounding strangely casual. "I was just doing some financial planning, just being responsible. And it made me think, have you and Mom thought about, updating your will?" I remember I laughed. "Kayla, we're not planning on going anywhere." No, I know she'd laughed with me, but it felt forced. "It's just, practical, with property values and everything, just to make sure everything is clear." At the time, I'd brushed it off. I told Laura it was just Kayla being clumsy, a little too focused on money, but that her heart was in the right place. But now, sitting in the heavy 3-day silence, that question didn't feel clumsy. It felt cold. It felt professional. I picked up my phone. Still dark. No missed calls, no texts. "That's it," I said to the empty room. I packed a small overnight bag. The surprise visit wasn't a gift anymore. It felt like an audit. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself I'd get to Scottsdale, knock on the door, and Laura would open it laughing, asking why I didn't just call. I got in my car and started the drive. The whole way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't driving to see my daughter. I was driving toward an answer I didn't want to find. I drove straight to Scottsdale General Hospital, my hands gripping the steering wheel. That drive was a blur. I left the car in a no-parking zone right by the emergency entrance and ran inside. At the front desk, I was frantic. My wife, Laura, Samuel. She was brought in last week. An accident. The nurse looked up, her expression unreadable. "One moment, sir," she typed. "She is here." Intensive care unit, 4th floor. Intensive care. The words didn't compute. You get food poisoning, you go home with some fluids. You don't go to the ICU. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The 4th floor was quiet, antiseptic, punctuated by the rhythmic electronic beeps of machines that keep people alive. I found the nurse's station. "Laura Samuel, I'm her husband." A doctor intercepted me. "Mr. Samuel, I'm Dr. Chen." She had that calm, devastating composure that doctors use when they're about to destroy your world. "We've been trying to reach your daughter, Kayla. She was listed as the emergency contact." "What happened?" My voice was hoarse. "It's not food poisoning," she said, her eyes holding mine. "Your wife was brought in with a severe overdose. We had to intubate her. She was unresponsive." "Overdose? Of what sleeping pills? Did she mix something?" Dr. Chen shook her head slightly. "The toxicology report was specific. It was fentanyl, illegally acquired. The dosage, Mr. Samuel, the dosage wasn't accidental. It was enough to be lethal. She's incredibly lucky that the landlord Dennis called 911 when he did. Another 30 minutes. She didn't need to finish. The blood drained from my face. Fentanyl. A lethal dose. My mind flashed to Kayla's question. "Have you thought about updating your will?" "Where is she?" "Room 412, but I need you to prepare yourself." The room was dark. The only light came from the monitors casting a sterile green and orange glow. And in the bed, my wife, Laura. She looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. Pale, a tube in her mouth, wires connecting her to a symphony of machines that beeped and sighed. I pulled a chair to the bedside and just stared. This was the woman I'd loved for 40 years. The woman who'd raised our daughter. And that's when it happened. Something inside me shifted. The panic, the shock, the grief of the terrified husband. It all just evaporated. It receded. And in its place, something else rose up. Something cold and familiar. It was the accountant. The forensic accountant who'd spent 30 years of his life looking at spreadsheets and finding the lie. The man who hunted for patterns in chaos, who knew that every crime, every fraud, every betrayal always leaves a trail. They had left a trail. They had left a witness, Dennis the landlord, who knew they were late on their $5,000 a month rent. They had left a victim, and that victim was still alive. And they had left me. The one man on earth trained to follow a paper trail to its bitter end. They had underestimated me. And as I sat there listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. This wasn't a family tragedy. This was an audit. And I was here to balance the books. I sat in that plastic and vinyl hospital chair next to Laura's bed, the rhythmic pulse of the monitor the only sound in the room. I didn't call the police. Not yet. A police investigation is a blunt instrument. It's loud, it's messy, and it gives the guilty time to hide. My way is different. My way is silent. My way is to remove all the exits before the target even knows the building is on fire. I pulled out my phone. My first call wasn't to a detective. It was to a man named Alex, a data recovery specialist I've used for years. A magician who can pull deleted files from the digital void. "Alex," I said, my voice low, "I have a priority job, a laptop and 2 phones. I need everything. Encrypted chats, deleted histories, server logs, everything." While he got to work, I made my second call, back to my office. I'm retired, but I still have access. I started pulling on the financial threads of their startup. It didn't take long. My daughter Kayla and her husband Tyler weren't just struggling. They were drowning. I found the pitch deck for their failed crypto venture, and in it the balance sheet. It was a fantasy. But the debt was real. They owed $450,000 to a private investor, due in 60 days. I kept digging. And then I found it. The guarantee. My signature forged, promising my assets as collateral if their company failed. They hadn't just been asking about my will, they had already started spending it. An email pinged. It was Alex. He'd cracked their encrypted chats. It was all there. A conversation from 3 weeks ago. "Tyler, the investor is going to ruin us. We're out of time." Kayla's reply. The fentanyl thing, it has to look like an accident. Mom has anxiety, she takes medication, it's plausible. Then the last one, Tyler. Are you sure this is your mother? Kayla. It's the only way to fix the funding gap. It's us or them. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a cold, sharp calm. The emotional fog was gone. I had the motive $450,000. I had the intent, the chat logs. And I had the means, the toxicology report from Dr. Chen. Now I could make the call. Not to the police, to my lawyer. Kayla and Tyler had just returned to their condo thinking they'd weathered the storm. They were wrong. The storm was just arriving. David, I said when my lawyer answered, "We're moving now." I explained the strategy. A criminal case takes time. Evidence gets processed. DAs get busy. I don't have time for that. I wanted them to feel the consequences immediately. So we launched the civil suit first. A criminal conviction requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A civil suit just requires a preponderance of evidence. And I had a mountain of it. We filed a civil lawsuit for $3 million for wrongful injury for medical costs, which were already over $350,000, and for punitive damages. But here's the weapon. With that lawsuit, we filed for a prejudgment writ of attachment. It's a beautiful legal instrument. It's a financial handcuff. Before they were even served, before they even knew what was happening, a judge saw my evidence, the forged guarantee, the chat logs, and signed the order. In a single silent moment, it froze everything they had. Every bank account, every stock, every crypto wallet I had tracked through their startup's ledger. The money they thought they'd use to escape gone. The condo they were living in locked. They weren't just going to prison. They were going to be ruined. And they were not under any circumstances going to use my own money to hire a team of lawyers to fight me. This wasn't just justice. This was accounting. For 3 days, I sat by that bed. I did not leave. I reviewed the data, I cross-referenced the timelines, and I waited. On the 4th morning, her eyelids fluttered. I stood up, my hand hovering over hers, not quite touching. "Laura?" Her eyes opened, unfocused. She tried to speak, but the intubation tube had left her throat raw. A nurse was there in an instant, helping her sip water. Her eyes scanned the room wide with a hazy panic. "Samuel," her voice was a rasp. How long?" "You're at Scottsdale General," I said, keeping my voice level. "You've been here for 4 days. You were poisoned, Laura." Her eyes filled with confusion, then recognition. She started to shake her head as if to deny it, but the memory was returning. No, I was at Kayla's. We were watching a movie." "What do you remember?" I asked gently. Her eyes unfocused, looking past me at the memory. I felt tired, stressed from the trip. Kayla made me some tea. She said it would help me relax." She paused, swallowing hard. "I started to feel dizzy, not tired, dizzy. My heart was pounding, Samuel. So fast, I couldn't catch my breath. I told her, 'Kayla, something is wrong. Call 911. Her voice broke, but she pushed on. She didn't. She just looked at me. She said I was having a panic attack, that I just needed to lie down. But it got worse. I reached for my phone. I was going to call myself." She was crying now, silent tears rolling down her temples. Tyler took the phone from my hand. He just took it, Samuel. And he stood in front of the door. He wouldn't let me leave. I begged him. I begged. And then nothing. Just waking up here." That was it. The final piece of the ledger. The active physical prevention of rescue. I stood up and kissed her on the forehead. "You just gave us the final entry," I whispered. "Get some rest. It's over." I walked out of the ICU and made the call. Not to my lawyer, to the Scottsdale police. When the detectives arrived at the hospital, I didn't give them a frantic, emotional story. I handed them a single thick binder. "In here," I said, "you will find the motive, a $450,000 debt, and a forged loan guarantee. You will find the intent encrypted chat logs detailing the plan to solve the funding gap. you will find the means a toxicology report showing a lethal dose of fentanyl. And on the last page, you will find the sworn testimony of the victim who has just woken up and remembers everything, including her husband Tyler physically preventing her from calling for help. The detectives looked at the binder, then at me. I've never seen police officers look so grateful. I had handed them a finished case tied with a bow. The arrests were quiet, no sirens. They picked them up at the condo. The financial handcuffs were already in place. They hadn't been able to access a single dollar to run. The collapse was immediate. This is what happens when a plan built on pure greed fails. There is no loyalty. There is only self-preservation. They were separated, of course. Standard procedure. They were each shown the binder, the chat logs, the forged signature, the debt. And then the detectives told them about Laura's testimony. Tyler broke first. Of course he did. He was weak. He cried. He said it was all Kayla. It was her idea, her startup, her debt. He just did what she said. He was just trying to save the company, save their life. He never really thought she'd go through with it. Then the detectives went to Kayla. They told her that her husband had just signed a full confession implicating her as the mastermind. Her reaction wasn't tears. It was rage, pure narcissistic rage at being betrayed by her partner. "He's lying," she screamed. "He told me he could get it. He's the one who found the fentanyl. He's the one who measured the dose. He told me it would just make her sleep until the investor money came through. He's pinning this on me." They turned on each other like rats in a cage. They tore each other to pieces, each one confessing to their own part of the crime just to ensure the other one went down too. It was exactly what I had accounted for. This wasn't just justice. It was a perfectly balanced equation. The criminal trial was a formality. With their confessions recorded, their mutual accusations, and the mountain of digital and financial evidence I'd provided, there was no defense. Kayla's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Tyler's influence. Tyler's lawyer tried to paint him as a fool, manipulated by a cold, calculating wife. I sat in the front row with Laura watching them. They didn't look at us. Not once. The judge was not impressed. Kayla was sentenced to 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. Tyler, because he broke first and testified against her, received 12. I watched them being led away in handcuffs, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just the quiet, final click of a calculator printing its last total. The question everyone asks, the question I saw in the eyes of the detectives, the lawyers, even my friends, is how could a daughter do this to her own mother? We want to believe it's a failure of love, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But sitting there, I finally understood the answer my 30 years as an accountant had prepared me for. Kayla wasn't my daughter, not in any way that mattered. She was a black hole of entitlement. This is the psychology of a pathological personality. Parents aren't people. They are resources. Our love wasn't an emotion, it was income. Our support wasn't a gift, it was a line of credit. For her entire life, she'd been drawing on that credit. And when the venture failed, when she was $450,000 in debt, she didn't see a mother she loved. She saw a resource she couldn't access quickly enough. When our love and support became an obstacle, we were no longer an asset on her balance sheet. We became a liability. And in the cold, clear logic of a personality like that, liabilities don't need to be negotiated with. They need to be cleared from the books. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a transaction. The criminal justice was done. Now for the final accounting. The civil trial finished a week later. With their guilty pleas, it was an open and shut case. The court awarded us $2.5 million in punitive damages plus the $350,000 for Laura's medical bills. My lawyer David met me outside the courthouse. "They're bankrupt, Samuel," he said. "The condo is in foreclosure. The startup is liquidated. You'll never see a dime of this." "I know," I said. "We're not here to collect." He looked at me confused. "Then what was the point?" "The point," I said, "is the public record. The criminal conviction might be sealed one day. They might get out on parole. But a civil judgment of $2.5 million, that's forever. It's indexed. It's public." I wanted a permanent legal searchable document that said for the rest of their lives, anytime a potential employer, a new friend, or anyone ever Googles the name Kayla or Tyler, the first thing they will find is the official court record of what they did. That's the real-life sentence. That's the part that never goes away. The books were balanced. It's been a few months. Laura is home. She's weaker than she was, and the doctors say her heart will never be quite as strong. But she's alive. She's resilient. We're adjusting to our new normal. One night I went into my home office. It was late. The house was quiet. I sat at my desk and opened my old laptop. I pulled up a file I hadn't touched in all this time. It was an Excel spreadsheet I started the day Kayla was born. It was a ledger. Every parent knows what I'm talking about. It started with diapers and formula, then daycare, then private school tuition. Ballet lessons, summer camps, her first car, her college tuition, every dollar all tracked. I wasn't just an accountant at work. I was an accountant at home. I scrolled down to the bottom line, the total amount I had invested in her. It was a staggering number. I stared at that number for a long time. Friends ask us how we're doing. They ask how we could just cut off our own daughter. They don't understand. They see it as a family drama. They don't see it for what it was. Justice doesn't feel like a win. It doesn't bring you peace. It feels like a surgery. It feels like a necessary amputation. You see, we weren't just cutting off Kayla, the woman in the state penitentiary. That was the easy part. The hard part. The part we're doing now is grieving the daughter we thought we had. The little girl in the photographs, the student I was so proud of. We're finally admitting to ourselves that she never really existed. She was a projection. She was a story we told ourselves. That's the amputation. You have to cut away the infected limb, but you also have to cut away the memory of ever having it. You have to mourn the loss of something that was never real. I looked at the final number in that spreadsheet, the sum total of our investment in a failed asset. My hand moved to the mouse. I highlighted the entire column, and I hit delete. The number vanished. The ledger was clear. For the first time in my entire life, my chest felt light. The books were finally truly balanced. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.